Hello, friends. Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is the right tech stack for brokers with my friend Dave Romanchuk. How's it going, Dave?
Going great. Joe, how are you?
Doing great. I'm excited to talk to you about this. Dave, please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from today.
Sure. So I'm Dave Romanchuk. I am the Director of Product Management at RevenovaTMS. So RevenovaTMS, for your listeners that don't know, we were founded back in 2014. We are a cloud-based TMS application built on the Salesforce CRM platform. Again, for those that don't know, Salesforce is one of the largest, if not the largest, cloud-based CRM platform in the entire world. So we fashion ourselves as a CRM-powered TMS application, primarily focused at really 3PLs and freight brokers. That's been our bread and butter for the past 8 to 10 years. Although we are starting to break into the carrier space as well and asset management. But like I said, I think our main focus has been truckload and LTL-based freight brokers and looking to expand into the carrier space at this moment.
So where is Revenova based and where are you based?
Yeah, so our corporate headquarters is based in a small town in northern Illinois called Bannockburn, Illinois. But we have the office that I'm currently located at, which is in downtown Chicago, and I call it the Annex. This is kind of where most of the folks sit. Our corporate headquarters is a little bit of a smaller crew up there, but most of the folks are based in Chicago, a handful of folks up in Bannockburn. And then we have a lot of remote folks as well, scattered throughout the U.S. So some folks in the Southeast, some in the Northwest, some in the Northeast. So really all over the place.
So I want you to, I know you're a techie, so you can explain some of the hard stuff for laymen like me. When you say Salesforce and it's a platform, and I want to get into this in a minute, Salesforce more or less invented the software as a service business. And I want to talk about that in a minute. What do you mean you're based, or what did you say? Did you say based or you say built into?
Yeah, built on Salesforce. Yeah,
built on their platform. Please elaborate for those, because I'm trying to visualize what that all looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. When I get that question asked, I think the best analogy that I can make is similar to your smartphone. So I'm an iPhone guy. So you can think of it like your smartphone, which your iPhone would be the platform. So your iPhone is Salesforce. And obviously, we all know you can download and install 1 to 100 different applications on your iOS onto your iPhone. Revenova is pretty similar in that regard. Obviously, a lot more functionality than a simple iPhone app. But basically, Salesforce is the infrastructure. So they have data centers all over the place. And you mentioned software as a service. They have data centers really all over the world. And we are simply one application of, I think there's over 5,000, might even be over 10,000 other applications that are built on the platform. So again, it's more of a plug-in solution and a solution that's built on top of the platform that works seamlessly with the cloud-based CRM that comes standard out of the box with Salesforce. When you think Salesforce, you think CRM. But it works seamlessly with the 5,000 plus other applications that are built similar to your iPhone.
Right. And I'm an Android guy. See, we can all get along. What's cool about this, and this wasn't true day one, week one, when we got our phones, whether it's Android or Apple, is does that app download? So I go to the Play Store, you go to some other store, a lesser store. I go to the Play Store and it says you can download this app. When I download that app, I know it's compatible with my phone. And I know that there's also usually like ratings on it saying, here's what people like about it. So if I wanted to download something about breathing exercises for my phone, I could look at probably 20 different apps, all rated. But I know one thing, when I download it onto my phone, it works. And if we blow that up a little bit and we say probably one of the largest platforms is Salesforce, and you guys aren't an app, you said an application, obviously a lot more sophisticated, a lot more functionality. But what's nice about it is it works everywhere within Salesforce.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you mentioned the ratings that you can see on the App Store. It's the same thing with Salesforce. So Salesforce has what they call their App Exchange. And if you go to Google, type in the Salesforce App Exchange, and then you search for RevenovaTMS, you'll see our app listed. And I think we have something like a 4.9 star rating. I forget exactly how many ratings we have, but it's the same idea. So you, just like you said, it's one of those things where it works. It's not a monolithic application that requires a lot of overhead and doing upgrades, and doesn't take very long. It's one of those things where we like to think of it as bringing the 21st century to TMSs. So making things easier, but not sacrificing functionality.
There's some real advantages and significance to being part of the Salesforce ecosystem, so to speak. And we'll get to that in a minute. But I want to talk for just a sec, again, since you're going to educate us here, Dave. When I say software as a service, that was not always a thing. I think it's about 10 years old. What is software as a service, and why did that pop up, and why did Salesforce develop that?
Sure. So when you think about investment in technology prior to the concept of software as a service, a lot of the investment, a lot of the money being spent by really every industry that needed certain technology, a lot of that is overhead. So it's investing in servers, and investing in system admins that can maintain those servers, and managing cybersecurity around those servers. And a lot of it was less about actual business needs and more of supporting the business. So it really was more of a line item
The
on
infrastructure.
the infrastructure. And so software as a service came along, whereas as a business, you don't care about how many servers you have or maintaining them. All you really care about is being good at your specialty, being good at what you do. And so what software as a service does, or SaaS as they call it, is a way to alleviate that line item. So it's one of those things where you purchase an application and you don't have to worry about all of the back end functionality. You just have the service available to you.
Yeah, I worked for a software company briefly out of Silicon Valley, and I remember it wasn't so long ago either. And they had if you bought our software, you got disks, and your guys put it on your premises. You would take that, basically your computers, big mainframes, and the challenge with that is your server secure? Hopefully, but maybe not. It's in a facility. And every guy who ever ran a server became a prima donna because he was in charge of the business, in effect. And what the cloud basically said is, you don't need your prima donna or your own server anymore, because we'll host that software. And here's the best part. You used to also get disks for updating every quarter. Hey, here's the 3 updates for all of the cybersecurity problems we had. Just fix it. And people didn't always update. So now if you're in a cloud, those updates are happening. I'm guessing companies like yours are constantly updating. Every time they see a problem, they say, we updated overnight, and nobody has a choice. What would happen over time is people would end up with basically a different software because they never updated. And then when they call and say, hey, we got a problem, you're like, you're on your own, dude. That's a 7-year-old software you're using.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. We are working our way towards a more regular release cadence and software updates. Right now, we do roughly 4 a year. I think the intent eventually will be to do monthly releases, and even more so beyond that. If there are obviously urgent needs, we can cut releases sooner than that. But you're right on. It's the getting off the on-prem solutions and having the cloud-based infrastructure really makes businesses more efficient.
Yeah. And also the updates used to be onerous. It'd be like, okay, we're shutting the business down for the day because who knows what the update looks like. Hopefully it doesn't shut us down and ruin our business for the day.
Exactly right.
So Dave, tell us a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you joined the mothership that is Revenova.
Sure. Originally, I was actually born in Minnesota, so a Twin Cities area. So Midwest guy at heart. But then when I was about 6 years old, my dad chased the dot-com bubble, the boom out in Silicon Valley. So we picked up and moved to San Jose, California. So it's right in the heart of Silicon Valley. So I'm a Bay Area guy. And so spent basically my entire childhood growing up in San Jose at age 16. So grew up there, loved it. It was a great childhood. I commend my parents a lot for the childhood that they gave me and my 4 siblings.
4 siblings in San Jose. Oh my God, your dad. I hope he got a ton of money from somebody because it's expensive there.
He worked very hard, I'll tell you that, and obviously, I love my dad a lot and learned a lot from him, and I think that's, part of the reason why I've personally been successful and brought that success to Revenova as well.
So to give us some career highlights, where'd you go to school, and then give us some career highlights and why you joined Revenova?
Yeah, sure. For school, for my undergrad degree, I went to RPI, which is Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. I know it's not a super popular school amongst the general population, but I was a huge fan of it.
It's a huge tech school, though. Everybody in tech knows it.
Yes, yes. If you're in the know, you're in the know. But so went to RPI for undergrad. I got my mechanical engineering degree. And the reason I did that is growing up, I was always really good at math and science. And so I wanted to go into STEM specifically. And Joe, I know you're an automotive guy. Specifically, when I decided to do my mechanical engineering degree, was so that I could get a job at an automotive engineering firm. That was always the goal, always the dream. And fortunately, so when I went to RPI, I actually played ice hockey on the team
Oh,
there.
wow. They have a top. I was just going to say that even before you said you played hockey. That is a top hockey school.
Yeah, so I will admit, so there are 2 teams at the school. I played on the lesser of the 2. They
No,
have
no shame there, man. They punch way above their weight.
oh yeah, I'm very proud. We used to be the Red Hawks, and then they changed their names. Now they're just the Engineers, which is not a great mascot team name. It is what it is. We know who we are. But so I played hockey at school, and when I was there, I met a guy when I was a freshman. He was a senior on the team, and he got a job, a career at working for General Motors. And so I kept in close contact with him because I knew that's all I ever wanted to do. And then when my time came 4 years later, I reached out and said, "Hey, I loved my degree here. I really enjoyed it. Still very interested in going to GM." And he got me an interview, and I got a job working at GM.
Yeah, I've said this many times, and you probably recognize this also. When I started in automotive many moons ago, it was mechanical engineering was king. And when I left 15 years ago, I remember I was no longer working in engineering. It's more program management, but I never had an engineering degree. I just worked in it. My dad owned an engineering business. I always worked in it. And I will say that the mechanical engineers were saying, hey, all of this is electrical or electronics. I don't want to be the design release engineer on this. Our team shouldn't. I was like, I don't care because everything's got electronics, everything's got code. So what ended up happening, some mechanical engineers, all mechanical engineers are obviously smart and can pick that stuff up, but they weren't trained always in the electrical stuff or the electronics or the coding. I feel like the whole industry changed very, like probably in 15 years to everything having a chip in it.
Joe, I'm similar to you in that the electrical stuff was never really my forte. I didn't really enjoy it. I was mechanical. And luckily for me, the principles of thermodynamics haven't changed. So that's what I was more so focused on. So I was on our HVAC and thermal development team. So I didn't have to touch a ton of the electronics, which was
I
good
did
for me.
interior. I was like interior trim, no electron. Well, there was electronics bundled underneath it, but and seats, which we called rags and bags. But anyway, so you continued your education. Talk about that.
Yeah, so while I was at GM, they actually had an offering through the University of Michigan to get an advanced degree. And so while I was working full time at GM, I also did a master's of engineering degree at the University of Michigan. And the focus there was in Go Blue. Hopefully, you could see the degree up there. So, what I studied there or for that degree was energy systems engineering, because that was my second passion, if you will. I was always very interested in renewables and things of that nature. And obviously, GM has a big push and had a big push to move towards more electric vehicle electrification is what they called it. So something that I thought was really interesting and thought it would be a good way to, learn and advance the career. And I really enjoyed that too. So the school, obviously Michigan was fantastic, learned a ton and really enjoyed it, to be honest. It did take me about 3, maybe 4 years because I can only do one class at a time working full time, but don't regret it at all. It was a ton of fun. And now I get to cheer for the Wolverines.
Exactly. So give us some career highlights before you joined Revenova.
Sure. So pretty much my entire career prior to Revenova was working at GM. So I held a handful of roles at GM, kind of started from the bottom, which was honestly one of the coolest experiences of my life. So, as I said, automotive was all I ever wanted to do. And so the first job that I got out of school was they called us thermal performance development engineers. And so you can imagine 21-year-old kid coming out of college. And the first job that I had was working on next generation undercovers, the next generation product that wasn't going to be released for another 1 to 2 years, basically testing prototypes. So I always tell people that the first job that I had is you've probably seen the commercials of the guys in the lab coats in the wind tunnel, and there's like a jet stream going over the car to see how aerodynamic it is. And that's basically what I did for the first kind of year to 2 years that I had at the job. So it was a very cool experience to actually get the hands-on experience, to real development, engineering, the hands-on work. So that was fantastic experience. But obviously, as I learned more and more to advance my career, I wanted to get more involved in the business side of things. So it's the development side was fun and I learned a lot and I like working on cars, but I recognized I wanted to expand the skill set a little bit and get more into the corporate side of things, if you will. So eventually worked my way up I guess we'll call it the corporate engineering ladder. And the final job that I had, which was also really cool at GM, I was our global vehicle systems engineer, is what they called it, for our next generation crossover SUVs. So if you've seen the Cadillac XT5, that was my baby back in the day when they first released it. But essentially, I was responsible for all of the systems in the car related to HVAC and thermal. So your heating, your cooling, your engine cooling, exhaust treatments, all of that. And really enjoyed that because you got to see the engineering side of things, which is obviously development and testing and all of that. But then also, I learned a lot on the product and program management side of things, working with cross functional teams. I worked a lot with our assembly plants, which is a whole different world, which is amazing. I worked with the quality department, the testing department, all of that.
So when and why did you move to Revenova?
Yeah, so as I got more and more up the corporate ladder at GM, I recognized that it is a big kind of slow moving ship, so not super dynamic nature, which makes a ton of sense. And so I wanted to try something new. I wanted to do something that was different, that was going to be faster paced, perhaps a bit more challenging when it comes to really just the speed of business. And I think one of the other big things was I felt like a small cog in a big machine at GM.
That's because that's what you were.
Yeah, pretty much. I like to think I was a significant cog, but a cog nonetheless. But yeah, so I wanted to join a smaller company that I had more of an impact on. And ashamedly or not, what I will say is, so what happened was I started looking for a job, and my uncle, who is our CEO and co-founder, heard that I was actually looking for a job, and he knew the work that I had done at GM and just mentioned, "Hey, Dave, we're looking for a project manager and implementation kind of coordinator." I know it has nothing to do.
Who's your uncle?
So my uncle is Charles Craigmile.
Oh, okay. All right. Yep. I'm connected to him on LinkedIn.
Yep. Yeah. And actually, his brother, Dave Craigmile, is my other uncle. People say nepotism. I say, hey, let me share the rest of the story. And then,
You earned it.
yeah.
So I got to tell you, I heard this many years ago. Seth, a writer, said there's two kinds of companies, and I think you'll recognize what I'm talking about here, Dave. There's the battleship, and General Motors is almost the definition of a battleship. Thousands of people on board, and when one man goes down, the next man steps up and hopefully can do the job 80 to 90% as well as you did. And the nature of battleship is potentially getting shot. There's always this idea that we can replace Joe, we can replace Dave, we can replace anybody because it's a battleship. Do you really want to work at a battleship? Or the other way is to look at it as a blueberry pancake. You go, okay, there's a blueberry pancake. It has 12 blueberries in it. If you take out 2 or 3, it's noticeable. Right? So you don't want to work at the battleship where no one knows whether you went down or not. You want to be at a place where you're in the blueberry pancake and they say, "Oh yeah, dude, you are a very important blueberry in this pancake." And I can tell you, I spent a lot of time in automotive, a lot of time. And one of the things that I will say is, you'll never work with smarter people. It's a great industry, but when somebody says, "Oh, my dad designed that car, my dad was the engineer on that car," him and 4,000 of his friends. So I point to cars and say, "Oh yeah, I made that scuff plate that you step on when you get in the car." And they're like, "Oh, you built it?" I was like, "I designed it. I was the engineer on it." There was like 10 other engineers on it, one way or
Yep,
another.
yep, exactly right.
So it's a lot different than when you come over to a great company like Revenova, where you can impact the product day to day.
Right. And what I will say, just so people don't make too much fun of me, is when I joined, I believe I was employee number 8, and I think I was one of 2 kind of implementation project managers. So it was a tight ship, ran a tight ship, and very efficient. So we did a lot of work, and now we're up to, I think we're close to 70 employees now. So I was like to think that I was here from the beginning before we even had a Chicago office. We were in Bannockburn exclusively, and so I think I like to think I've earned my stripes, and the company's been successful, so it's been a great time.
Yeah, if you guys keep growing, you're going to become a battleship.
Maybe we'll pause hiring.
Yeah, exactly. Today's topic is the right tech stack for brokers with my friend Dave Romanchuk. Before we hit record, we were talking about this whole idea of a tech stack. And in the olden days, not so long ago, brokers had a tech stack. It was called the phone. You make a whole bunch of phone calls. Then we got a transportation management system. I think virtually every broker now of any note has a TMS and a lot more. But that's not the only thing they need. So let's talk a little bit about the tech stack that you need to be successful as a broker. So walk us through this, Dave. What's the first thing I need? I already said it, the TMS. So talk about the TMS for a sec. We won't go into great detail, but we can talk about it.
Sure. Yeah, so like you said, obviously the TMS is number 1. That's the bread and butter of the systems that you're gonna be using as a broker.
Backbone of your business.
Exactly. And TMS can mean a lot of different things. Some people call an Excel spreadsheet their TMS. So I think the TMS is the backbone, but I think what's important to recognize is not all TMSs are made equal, and it really does depend on what your business is, what modes of transportation you move, which can lead the discussion around what you actually need from a TMS. But that's the core functionality of quote to cash, as they say.
Yep. Yep. And so what's the second thing I need for my tech stack?
Yeah, so I think the second thing, which is I think differentiates us at Revenova, I would say is a CRM. One of the kind of reasons that Revenova, our co-founders, decided to build on Salesforce is because it is, and first and foremost, that's what they were founded to do, was to be a CRM, which CRM, for those that don't know, is customer relationship management
And
software.
Salesforce invented it in effect.
Yeah, more or less. Being customer focused, I think, is something that a lot of, well, pretty much all industries had been working towards meeting your customer needs. Amazon is a great example. You can pull up your phone and see exactly where your package is down to the stop. And so they were very customer focused and managing those relationships. And so with the TMS, the kind of the vision that we had is a CRM powered TMS. And so with being built on the Salesforce platform, you get that natively, basically the number 1 CRM in the world. So your backbone is still the TMS, but then I guess the brain, if you will, or the heart will be the CRM side of
I
it.
do hear people say to me, "Oh yeah, we ship," and I hear them when they talk about their transportation management system. Sometimes I've heard them even say, "Oh, our CRM," because I'll look at what they're shipping, and that's in our CRM, and I always think, is that not what they're shipping in the TMS? But I guess that's the nature of the integration at this 1 minute.
Yeah, yeah. The CRM is another one of those things where people say, I think in general, just our ERP system, which I think in a sense you can consider Revenova to be an ERP system by nature of it being on the Salesforce platform, because you can have a CRM and a TMS and an accounting platform and an HR platform or software all baked into the same, what we call an instance or an organization, or org for short, in your Salesforce environment. So it is a single one-stop shop for all of your needs.
Yep. And not so long ago, when I said a TMS, my expectation was it did everything I needed to do to manage my business, almost. It didn't have the accounting piece, probably, but the transportation management system let me basically do the quote and then do that whole workflow for a broker. Now, I think we're looking at this and saying it is the framework that a whole bunch of other applications plug into. And that is relatively new. And I don't know, whatever, there's a lot of transportation management systems out there. But the older ones, I think, probably had to build integration layers in the last couple of years because everybody who's a broker now wants a whole bunch of different applications that probably isn't offered by the transportation management system. Maybe it's not a good fit. Maybe it's just a brand new technology. And this is the weird thing about it. Right now, we're talking here in October 2024. I bet in a year from now, there'll be a new application that everybody says, oh, you got to get it, whatever it is. Not so long ago, we didn't have the visibility apps. Now it is table stakes. You have to have it. We know about freight fraud. All of a sudden, we have to have those apps. And it's difficult enough to own a transportation management system and have to upgrade that, keep that, but it's hard to go out and develop all new these applications on your own. So what you guys have done, and you're not the only ones, but you like to think you do it better, I'm sure. You guys have, the newer transportation management systems are built with the idea that we have to integrate. And when you're baked into the Salesforce CRM, that was from the beginning. You said, yeah, the advantage of being part of Salesforce is we can connect to all these other applications. Please elaborate.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. So it's the classic build versus buy mentality, right? You can build a TMS that has a ton of different visibility tools, but there are providers out there that do it better and they can do it faster and faster to market. And honestly, a lot of the integrations that we do have, I think we're integrated with 45 plus different third-party service providers. But just like you said, it's one of those things where customers expect it. It's table stakes at this point. So our broker customers will come to us and say, hey, we need XYZ integration. This customer requires it for us to do business with them. And instead of having a monolithic approach to software development, being on the platform, one of the biggest selling points of being on the platform is literally anybody today can go to Google, type in Salesforce development environment, and get their own free development org and build to the existing Salesforce APIs and start working with the data within Revenova. So it's a very open platform that enables speed and efficiency for the folks that are actually interested in doing it.
Yep. And I remember, again, not so long ago when I was at a 3PL, when we wanted something integrated, it was a big project. And now we just, with the APIs and some of the other integration tools, it's overnight. I don't want to overstate it, but it's a lot faster and it's a lot less expensive.
Yeah, if my engineering team heard you say that, they might yell at me, but you're definitely right.
I heard somebody say it used to be 9 weeks, now it's 9 days, and soon to be 9 hours.
Yeah, and admittedly, Joe, before I joined, so I'm on our product team now. Before I was on our product team, I actually was on our engineering team. So I've personally built several integrations that are in place in the TMS. And you're right, it's, the platform is easy to use and easy to integrate with. So it's something that is much easier or faster to integrate.
So when you look at your technology roadmap, it has things that you guys are going to do with what you own, the TMS. And are you also saying our technology roadmap has partners who will be joining? And do you know some of them that don't exist? How do you plan for the future when you don't know what's going to not exist?
Yeah, no, great question. And the answer to your question is yes. So we publish a roadmap that our customers can see, and it includes both enhancements that we are doing to the core TMS itself. So we have a modular set of tools that can be used for different functions like pricing or tracking or things like that within the TMS. But then we also have many things on the roadmap that are basically direct integrations to third-party service providers that are, better at certain things than we are. Certainly that. And then as far as future-proofing the system, that's one of the main tasks of my job and my team's job, is to keep our finger on the pulse of the industry. You mentioned fraud before. tracking visibility was a big buzzword a handful of years ago. One of the newer words that I'm sure that you've heard, AI and machine learning, is another kind of buzzword in the industry right now. And so we take all of this kind of feedback and inputs and decide based on, it's probably 5 or 10 different parameters that influence what we decide to work on. And the things that make sense. I say this to my team all the time. A good idea is a good idea. And we try to not follow the flashy object, but we look for business value in a lot of the things that we build. And so with that, I guess a prime example is, not that we're late to the game on this by any means. AI and machine learning has been around. It's not anything new, but it feels like there's a lot more kind of focus on it and interest in it over the past couple years. And so we're actually endeavoring down that path ourselves right now. I think in one of the upcoming releases, we're talking about building our own. I'm not sure exactly what it'll be yet. It might be email parsing, scraping, auto generation of loads, pricing, things like that. But that's an example of something that there are partners out there that kind of do similar things, but that's an example of one that we could take in-house, and there's a lot of value to it.
Yep. And I always say AI, we all have to go in, especially technologists like yourself, have to be cautious about it, because if we don't have good data, the idea that you're going to say, yeah, we have the computing power, we have access to this, and we can create the algorithms, but do we have good data? And if you don't have good data, then it doesn't matter if you have the algorithm and the computing power. So I think we're really I heard somebody use this term, AI readiness phase, which is, let's clean up our data. Let's normalize our data. Let's make sure that we get into this. We used to say garbage in, garbage out, but I feel like with AI, it's like garbage in, garbage squared.
I like that. I'm going to have to remember that.
Anyway, so we talked before we hit the record button. We talked about some of these third-party service integrations that you guys have. So walk us through some of those. And I know you have a flow that you like to talk about from the beginning to end of an order.
Yeah, sure. I think I mentioned before, we have something like 45 plus different integration providers. So
and growing.
and growing, yeah, continuously. So apologies to all of our partners. I'm not going to be able to mention everybody, but really it follows the flow of a standard load, right? In order to move a load, you first need to have a load. So customer onboarding, and then probably more importantly or more significant to our industry is carrier onboarding. So there are multiple tools that we're integrated with today. For example, RMIS, TruckStop, SaferWatch, My Carrier Portal. So several of these kind of carrier onboarding and monitoring services that we are directly integrated with that allow our customers to basically validate and confirm the carriers that they're working with. So really that's step one, is onboarding.
And increasingly important because of the freight fraud. We need to make sure that we're bringing on carriers that are safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think fraud continues to be a problem. It's always been a problem, but it seems in this day and age, especially with advances in technology on the bad side of things, for the fraudsters, if you will, they can become very convincing to steal loads and things like that.
I saw yesterday a friend of mine on LinkedIn, she posted about how we're using a lot of technologies to automate a lot of things. And as a result, we don't have the relationships we might have once had. And I always think about this is, relationships are important, but so is automation. So is the technology that lets us go faster, better, cheaper, right? But you're never defrauded by someone you talk on the phone with. And you're probably not going to be defrauded by the guy you've been working with for the last 5 years. And I sometimes think that what happens is that automation, which I'm all for, we've got to somehow figure out a way to still say, make a phone call. Because this is something with the problem. If I was talking to you on a regular basis, I would know things about you and your business, and hopefully that would prevent the fraud that we see. But again, automation isn't going away, so we're going to need the applications that allow us to be safer.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think you're right. I don't think there necessarily is a silver bullet that says, okay, not only are we automating the relationship, onboarding this carrier, but also ensuring they are who they say they are. I think there will always be a human element to it. But I think to me, it's an incremental benefit that you're going to get from as technology advances. Those benefits at the end of the day, relationships are of utmost importance.
It's a weird thing. Every new technology we get, we love it, and it also causes us grief. So when I was young, they used to talk so much about, oh, this generation is in front of the TV for so many hours. They don't go outside and play. They don't do all this. And it was true. It was different than our parents' generation. Now we have the mobile phones, which are a miracle that we have these. It's a flat out miracle, but we also waste time and do stupid things with these phones. So the automation, it's great. We want it. We need it, but it also brings us some grief. What's the next area beyond carrier onboarding?
Yeah, sure. Once you have your customers, your carriers onboarded, and you've won, or I should say you're bidding on a load, obviously the next step would be any pricing negotiations. So trying to decide what to price the load at for the customer, and then deciding how much you're willing to pay a carrier to move said load. So we have a handful of tools within the TMS that enable our users to assess that and make a good decision. But obviously, I think the best way to make a good decision is based on data-driven decisions here. And so we're integrated with many of the major kind of rate providing services like DAT and Truck Stop and Freight Waves. I'm sure there are others that I'm forgetting off the top of my head.
But it's increasingly important because I want to be able to bring on a young person onto the team, a new person on the team who doesn't necessarily know how much that lane costs. And I don't want to have to rely on tribal knowledge to grow, which we've traditionally done, which is, hey, Dave's been around for a minute. He knows exactly what Atlanta to LA costs. Dave's not always going to be here. And he also doesn't know the market changed overnight. And that's the problem that we have with relying on tribal knowledge. Having data doesn't force you to use that data. It just gives you, hey, here's some guardrails, guy. here's what people are paying for right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Although what I will say is I think some of the tribal knowledge is relevant, and we've put that lens on the data in the TMS. So we are integrated with those major service providers, like I mentioned, but then to increase the usability of the data that we get from those providers, we also have tools in the TMS. There's basically two primary tools that we use. One's called Rate IQ, and the other one is called Lane IQ. And just as an example, Rate IQ, for example, is a tool that can consume data from all of the different sources that I mentioned and your own internal data, the load and lane information that's in the TMS. And it puts all of that information into a big bag, and you can define the different weightings for what I want 50% of my suggested pricing to be based on my tribal knowledge data that I have here, as opposed to the other services. So we take both approaches, where it's use the mass data that's out there, but then also use the tribal knowledge that might be your secret sauce.
It's interesting. I use Waze. I think I'm not the only one, obviously. And every once in a while, when I'm going somewhere I've never been and I'm using Waze, I'll go, God, this doesn't seem right. And in the past, I've used what I'll call my tribal knowledge, which is a little rusty apparently. And I will take a longer route or get lost because I didn't want to believe Waze. Now I'm like, it's just right. I don't know any other way to say it.
I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
And it's sometimes counterintuitive, and that's the difficult thing. And I think we're going to struggle with this in an AI world when somebody gives you information, go, that doesn't seem right. And then you override it. And I think we're going to do that a fair amount of times before we go, okay, stop overriding it. You don't know what you think. You don't know what you think.
Yeah, it gets back to that whole concept of automation is great and we should be using it where appropriate. Sometimes you do need to do overrides, maybe not most of the time. There's always that balance, the human touch that is required.
So let's talk about visibility. That's the next thing on our list. Obviously, we've never talked about visibility on this podcast.
Really? Oh.
No, I joke. When it first came out, 50 people in a row said, I would like to talk about visibility. I was like, hey, come on. There's got to be some other topics we can talk about. But what are some of the visibility providers you guys work?
Yeah, sure. So we work with kind of the main ones that you would expect. So the macro point, we integrate with Trucker Tools. We integrate with Project 44, SMC3 for LTL tracking, So there's a handful of the kind of those major providers that we are integrated with. Forkites is another one. Like I said, I apologize for the partners that that I forget, but and a lot of it is driven from really customer requirements. So as there's tons of visibility providers out there, and so what we've done is we've taken an approach of we'll build it when there's a need and a desire for it. So I think I mentioned 4 or 5 that we're integrated with. Those are the kind of the main ones, and we live in an Amazon era where people are always interested in knowing exactly where their freight is. And I think those providers are the main culprits for folks wanting to see their data.
And I won't mention any names in particular. I think it's happening virtually everywhere, but I was just at 2 conferences. I was at CSCMP and I was at Trimble. And I heard people talking about the visibility tools getting better all the time, which we know is going to happen, but they said it's more accurate and there's more data points. And sometimes I've seen some of that data. Somebody says, yeah, we got that data, but it's not that helpful. There's nothing worse than having a ton of data that you can't do anything with. I think that data is becoming more and more usable as companies like yours normalize it, clean it up. I know that's what they're doing also, but I think we're going to have so much more to go on. And I truly believe we're going to get to a point not so long where we don't have human information in our systems, where it's all going to be driven by IoT.
Yeah, I think you're right. And there are even certain industries, the ones that are the one that comes to mind most immediately is intermodal freight. A lot of the providers you'll have, I think they call them CLMs. I think it's cart location. I forget what it stands for, but it's basically where is the train and right now, and you get those pings once an hour. And so I think it's ripe for that specific vertical is ripe for, just like you suggested, the kind of technification, that's a word, of the industry. And we're headed that way. I think it's just a matter of time. It's a matter of when, not if.
Yep. And when I got to the logistics business, 2009, I was surprised, having left automotive, how many clerks were in the logistics business. And a lot of times it was taking information out of one system or putting it into another, or taking a fax that somebody sent. Google that, kids, if you don't know what a fax is. Getting a fax, and then data entry should be less and less of a job, obviously. And so if we can start using data that we know is pretty good, and wrong way to say it, when we get to the point where we say that data is perfect and it just effortlessly loads into my TMS, life is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're segueing into the next providers. I wasn't sure if that was intentional or not, but I think after visibility, it's load settlement.
Yep. So yeah. So one thing that drives me crazy is, I'm from the LTL space, is when you have a quote and then the invoice is different than the quote. Now, sometimes if I didn't give you the proper weight or the right classification, somehow got put on there wrong, if I did it or you did it, that drives me crazy. Because quote versus invoice, I used to say when I did that work that it undermined our relationship with customers because the pricing's not right. And so I've always, when I was in less than truckload, would say, I want to measure billing accuracy, because if I tell you it's going to cost $500 to ship that, or $800, and it ends up being $300 more, it's hard for me to say, yeah, you, especially if you bought it based on that price, right? And then I go, sorry, I screwed you, Dave. I didn't know, or you didn't weigh it. Now, if it's your fault, I can say, sorry, it's your fault, Dave. But if it's my fault, that drives me crazy. So for freight bill and audit is still a huge business. And elaborate, what kind of partners are you working with in that space?
Yeah. So I think before I jump into the partners, what I would mention is I think that's one of the things that the topic of this discussion is tech stack for brokers. I think that is oftentimes one of the overlooked pieces of the business. It's a very transaction heavy, very cash flow heavy industry business. And so to have the tools to make that as efficient and accurate as possible, I think is paramount. And I think a lot of folks overlook it. And so you've seen a lot of partners in the industry, even as of late, really starting to get into that space of freight bill and audit, just like you suggested. And I think it's great because I think it's one of those things that if we can eliminate efficiencies there, that's another kind of part of the business that is ripe for technification and improving efficiencies there. That's more of a general comment. As far as who Revenova is integrated with, our main integration partner in that regard is TriumphPay Audit, I think formerly known as HubTran. So there are tools like that that do, they call it OCR, I believe it's optical character recognition, I think is what it stands for. And really what that is, it's a tool that can automate the parsing of documents, the parsing of the carrier packets that includes proofs of delivery, their invoice, really all of the documentation, the supporting documentation that a broker needs to settle the load. So to bill their customer and settle their books. And HubTran, TriumphPay Audit is one of the main tools that we're integrated with, which is the goal is to make it as light a touch as possible. So the user basically logs into their portal, can see the document as it has been parsed and click a button. I think there are other workflows there too, but kind of the point is, just like you suggested, there's a lot of potential for clerical error when folks are manually entering these things. So as we have tools like TriumphPay Audit, there are a couple other partners that we're working with right now. We don't have them fully integrated, but folks like that can offer that type of service. It can reduce overall back office headcount because you're going to be more efficient and you don't need as many resources to really parse documents from carriers. And then on the flip side of that, then invoicing out to customers.
Right. And what we are all trying to do is we're trying to grow without headcount. And we also want to segue our people who are doing data entry and clerical work into more of a data analyst, data consultant role where they're saying, okay, we have some insights that are provided from the system. How do I move my people from really unrewarding work and boring work and things that we're not particularly good at as humans into work that building that relationship with your customers, making that phone call so you can actually have a relationship and actually bringing some value beyond, again, the data entry clerk work.
No, you're exactly right, which I think you touched on a very important piece, which I think a lot of folks would benefit from, is the intent we're not just trying to replace jobs, right? We're trying to replace the unneeded jobs that a human doesn't really need to do, but you can still generate value in other areas. If you're spending 8 hours a day manually typing in clerical work, invoice amounts, parsing documents manually, when you could be on the phone with your customer soliciting feedback or trying to generate new business, I think there's a lot of opportunity there for just, it benefits everybody, honestly.
Yep. I worked on a project not so long ago, I guess before COVID, this last kind of consulting and engagement I worked on. And somebody said, they've got all these guys, all these transportation analysts. And I was like, yeah. They go, they don't need those. And I was like, the way I look at it, all those guys, whatever they're making, and say they're making $100,000 a year, I think they could save us $1 million a year. I think they can also improve the service. This was a very big shipper. And so one thought is always, we can be more efficient. Let's get rid of headcount. Another way to look at it is, can we add value? And what we've learned, and again, I said it on my podcast, so I can't lie about it. I said, as technology became more important, we'd have less brokered freight because there's no need. The carriers can connect directly with shippers. But what we've seen is brokered freight has grown as a percentage of all shipping. And why is that? Because they're adding value in the middle. You don't get to be a middleman unless you add value. So brokers have been the ones who've invested in technology, invested in relationships, brought people. You hear customer success. Everybody's got a customer success team. Everybody's talking about how do we get better software? And then what we're talking about today is the broker tech stack. This is truly a lot of value to bring to a shipper that they didn't have even 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, no, again, you're right on the money there. It's one of those things where we're always trying to generate efficiencies in the business. But just like you said, it's not always just about efficiency gain. It's about value add. I definitely believe it's not a zero-sum game, that there are unbounded opportunities when it comes to adding value.
Yep. And we didn't touch on it too much, but fraud We didn't touch on it, but I know you guys connect with a whole bunch of the freight fraud apps, and so please talk about that.
Yeah, sure. Just like you said, fraud has always been a problem and always, I think, will be a problem, especially with technology advances. We are integrated, as I mentioned, with many of the kind of core carrier monitoring and onboarding services like Truckstop RMIS and SaferWatch and My Carrier Packets. We're also working on a few integrations with a couple other kind of fraud specific providers. I can't share exactly who they are quite yet, but they are coming just because we recognize that it is a need in the market and enhancements that we can make to the TMS, not only that we are personally building out, but also we talked a lot about integrations with partners. We have a system or a way for our customers to request enhancements, a standard process for our customers to request enhancements to the product. And so myself and my team, we're always looking at that list of suggestions or requests. And so there's been a couple providers that have bubbled up, I'll say, to the top of managing fraud. And so those are the ones that we're working with right now, and hopefully to be released in short order.
Yep. So I think I'm going to try and summarize all this. We've talked about a lot of stuff, but I think what we're getting at here is the right tech stack for brokers is what Revenova provides. And it's not just Revenova, it is all the other tools that you bring. So I'm going to summarize, then I want to get your final thoughts on the topic. So again, I'm talking to my friend Dave Romanchuk, and we're talking about the right tech stack for brokers. So obviously, we need a TMS. It's the backbone of your business. Next, you need a CRM. Again, I think Revenova has a nice pitch here that you are connected. You're part of their Salesforce ecosystem. So obviously have a really good CRM that is integrated. Integrated is key because there's a lot of times people have a CRM and they don't put everything in it because it's too difficult. It's a different system. We need to avoid that. And then you have all of these third-party service integrations. I told you I like to call them the killer apps, but you asked, is it to kill your business or to kill, like a good kill? It's killer apps or the good kill. And it's for carrier onboarding. And I won't mention all of the 45 guys you connect with. It's for carrier onboarding tools, pricing, both buy and sales tools, visibility, freight fraud, cybersecurity, obviously very important. That's why you're part of the Salesforce ecosystem, load settlement, proof of delivery, all of that. Put a big old bow on this one, Dave Romanchuk.
Sure. Yeah. So you mentioned a lot of kind of the core competencies that we offer at Revenova. And I don't mean to be, I'm a very real pragmatic guy, and I don't like to sugarcoat things. I think truly what we offer at Revenova is exactly what a broker needs. And for the tools that we don't have natively, just like you said, we have 45 plus integrations, and that list is continually growing. And then simply by being built on the Salesforce platform, by definition, you are scalable, you are future-proof, you are cloud-based, you are secure. So it truly is a great platform, and I love working for this company and excited to see where the future takes us.
I love it. I love it. So I saw you guys at Trimble. I was actually supposed to interview somebody at Trimble. I don't know if it was you or not, but I was supposed to do it. And we didn't do it there, so we're doing it now. But you guys are at all the conferences. Talk about a few of the conferences you'll be at in the coming months.
Yeah, so actually I wrote them down so I don't forget. So we're going to be at the Freight Waves show in November. So that's coming up here. We're talking in October. The SMC3 Jumpstart show in January of next year. And then right after that is the Manifest show. And then, of course, the main ones later in the year and the ATA show. So I think the plan actually next year is to be at everywhere. That's what our marketing folks tell us. So
Right.
We'll probably be all over the place.
We're talking on October 16th, and I think TIA Technovations is in Florida this week. And I know you guys are there. So I unfortunately couldn't be there this year. Great conference, but you can't go to all of them.
Yeah, we do have a job to do.
Exactly. What I'll do, Dave, is I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile, a link to your website, and any of the links you and your go-to-market team give me. I will put those in the show notes. And thank you so much for taking the time.
Perfect, Joe. Yeah, thanks. I really appreciated the conversation.
Yep. And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.